This is the final day of early voting. Polls close at 7 tonight, and this is a live look at the Samuel Grand Recreation Center in Old East Dallas. Statewide early voting for this midterm election has already surpassed the combined early and election day turnout in 2014. Fox 4's Sean Rabb breaks down the early voting numbers, and Sean, what that could mean on Election Day.
Yeah, Clarice, the early vote totals amassed, amazing. Early voting designed to drive people to the polls, but its recent popularity has turned it into a valuable voter targeting tool for politicians and political parties in their strategies, marketing, and get out the vote efforts. When the polls close on early voting, most who vote in Texas will have voted.
Early voting is 55–60% of the total vote, so most people now turn out early.
A record 15.6 million are registered. Through Thursday, 4.3 million Texans in the top 30 counties had already cast ballots. While the turnout is setting early voting records, we can't know what that means until Tuesday night.
All the emphasis on early voting, has this cannibalized Election Day voting? So will we see equally big numbers on Election Day like we've seen in early voting? We don't know.
Candidates and their parties, though, do know a lot about those who have voted, says Republican political consultant Vinnie Mancillo.
We know who has voted, we know where you voted, we know when you voted. We also know your voting history.
Access to that information does not come cheap, and typically only well-financed campaigns can afford it. Computer technology microanalyzing the early vote for the parties and the candidates.
They know to the block where they need to focus. We know exactly who's been to the polls. We know exactly who has not been to the polls.
Which is why some of you have been getting text messages reminding you to vote from campaigns who can afford to buy cell phone lists and match those with voters who've not been to the polls.
Texting you to voter identify you to begin with. Are you a yes? Are you a no? Are you undecided? And now texting you again to turn you out to the polls.
Despite what early voting trends can tell us, that may not be an indication of how the night will turn out, even for a candidate down by double digits, says SMU political science professor Cal Jilson.
If you can tell from the early votes and whether it's coming out of normally black precincts or Democratic precincts, or if it's coming out of Highland Park and it's usually Republican, that's how you try to project who's up in the early vote.
So the X factor in all of this early voting trend tracking, unpredictability, like the first-time voter, the voter who's been registered but who hasn't voted in past elections, and the number of registered voters who didn't vote early who will actually take the next step and vote Tuesday. Going to be exciting, going to be an exciting midterm in the Lone Star State.